Coach, there's not a player, there's not a team that will face the kind of adversity that I'm facing tonight. About 25 minutes ago, a disaster struck here when I opened my book bag and realized I don't have a white tee. How am I supposed to do the show? Colin suggested just go shirtless. HR shot that down. So I dug out my workout shirt, basically, which is a Nashville severe weather t-shirt. Support local weather, side note. So here we are. We're jam-packed, high atop a confused, discombobulated, and also a lawless downtown Nashville, Tennessee. I'll explain the third leg there in just a second, immunity. But in the meantime, we do have a jam-packed college football show tonight, 100% college football. I don't know what may or may not be happening out there in the rest of the world. We got college football to talk about here tonight. There are some interesting things to watch just on multiple different fronts. We're going to have kind of a grab bag of an A segment tonight. I thought two really interesting articles dropped today, and I'm going to point them out. We had an SEC schedule drop today, and we're going to have a lot more coming. So there are some really good things here, and there's some really terrible things, at least in my opinion, in the schedule drop today. We've got bold predictions on the show. I'll hit one of those in a little while. We've also got a Miami mood tracker on the show tonight. We've got a ton of Big Ten stuff on the show as well. I smile because last show, I made a special point to ask you to really listen to something I said. It was in another part of the show. Then I proceeded to misunderstand one of the bold predictions, and it occurred to me in the comments and feedback I got, you were listening, and every single one of you called me out on it. So I appreciate it. Thank you, including, people in my own social circle. Thank you. They're watching us in Temple Terrace, Florida, Salina, Ohio, San Diego, California, Jackson, Mississippi. I said it's lawless downtown Nashville, Tennessee. If you're listening on podcast, the good news is there's audio to this, so you will be able to hear it. I am 16 floors high atop Nashville, Tennessee at any given time when I'm in the office. That's where our studio is. We're smack dab in the middle of downtown. But if you don't believe me, Director Colin has a piece of video. I'm going to be quiet. He's just going to roll it. This was the situation as I was trying to get ready for the show today. How are we supposed to show prep? Listen to the tires if you're listening on podcast. It's like Grand Theft Auto Nashville across the street. Oh, and by the way, someone's filming the entire process. Metro PD, where are we at? Where are we at? You can hear this all the way down in Brentwood. So, look, I don't have a shirt. I don't have peace and quiet to get the show ready. Somehow we're going to soldier on as only we can do on the show tonight. We are live, and so we really have no other choice. You saw that 2 hours ago if you're following on social, at Late Kick Josh. Okay, let's dive in tonight. Let's stack our papers, and let's dutifully discuss many things actually happening. It was a busy day in college football. There's a lot changing in college football, right? I think we all understand that. We've got changes left and right. We've got the payment of players. We had the whole revenue sharing thing dropped in our laps last week and this week, and so all of that's understood, and we all agree on that. At least I think we do, because that's just fact. Then insert the opinion. And the opinion is, what do we think about it? Do we like it? Do we hate it? Is it going to ruin college football? Is it going to make college football better? And we can have those discussions, and in some cases we already have. But there is one opinion that's floating around out there, mainly amongst the more well-dressed types amongst us. And by that I mean administrators in the college football world. And they're running to every journalist who will see fit to print their thoughts, whether anonymously or on the record, and they're saying, there's no way we can afford this. There is just no way that we're going to be able, as currently structured, to afford to pay these players $20, $22, $23 million each year, and we're also going to, we're going to maintain our current standing? We're going to be able to maintain our current fiscal footing? Pause there. I know some of you scroll through your social media accounts from time to time, and I know that you've probably at some point, you scroll, and there's this girl who's crying. So you say, I wonder what she's crying for. Unmute the video. And she's talking about how she can't make ends meet. She can't afford to live anymore. And it's a sad thing. It's terrible. I hate it for this girl. She can't afford to live anymore. But let's keep listening. And come to find out, she's got a $2,400 a month rent in downtown Nashville, and she eats out 7 days a week, and she's got a very vibrant social life, and she's got a 2022 model car, fill in the blank, don't know what kind of brand it is, and you quickly realize, oh, she said she can't afford to live. What she meant is she can't afford to live within her means. could I suggest that this is not just a case of TikTok tears? In some cases, there are people in college athletics who have gotten rich off college athletics for a long time, and they're looking around saying, we got to give a lot of this money to players now. We can't afford to do that. What some of them mean is we can't afford to do it and still live the way that we've been able to live. And I want you to brace yourselves, because there are many things that could happen here, but what's not going to happen is these folks lose a dime. They're not going to lose money. Colin, do you have that quote from Matt Wyatt earlier today? So Matt Wyatt does great work over at Mississippi State. He also just gives great thoughts from time to time. And he said this earlier today. Thought it was perfectly stated. He said, it's interesting how we call some people leaders when they would never make a right decision that threatened to take money out of their own pockets. He said it better than I have. We have been trying to express that point for a long time on this show. Do you ever notice how none of the changes that happen in college football ever take money away from certain folks? Like you'd think just from random percentages and just random chance, eventually the right decision would cost them money, right? It never does. It never seems to. It's always funny. So with that in mind, I see Ross Dellinger put a little piece out on yahoosports.com today. And it was the least shocking headline ever. College football leaders exploring new revenue streams. As the time grows ever closer where we're going to have to share the revenue with the players, we're going to have more revenue. Why? Not because we don't currently have enough to pay them, although in some cases there's validity to that, but we don't have enough to pay them and also live in the same houses that we've grown accustomed to living in. How are they going to find new revenue streams? Well, although Nashville severe weather did not pay to have this emblem on my chest tonight, it was irresponsibility on my part. I forgot my regular white t-shirt. This is called product placement. And there is a world where instead of this being a Nashville severe weather logo with a little tornado chasing a person, great logo, by the way, this could be Coca-Cola. This could be Mountain Dew. And they could have paid me to splash their logo across my chest. They could have paid to put their logo on this monitor behind me. Well, that doesn't just happen on TV or the internet. That can happen in college football games. And it sounds like it's about to. Ross Dellinger detailing today, this is a quote from his piece, while the exact policy change won't be clear, the expectation is that schools will soon be permitted to display corporate names and logos at midfield, at the 25-yard lines, and the Playing Rules Oversight Group also oversees potential changes to jerseys, such as schools adding patches to a player's jersey a la NASCAR uniforms. And it just dawned on me that he put this in there. I want to say that last part again slowly. A la NASCAR uniforms, which sounds about like something hashtag these people would try to pull on us. Now, the reason I am trying to share this with you tonight is not to rattle you. This is a formality. This stuff's going to happen. And so if you're into the aesthetic product that is college football, I'm just going to go ahead and warn you, you're going to have to swallow some corporate pills, whether it be symbolism on the field or whether it be patches on the uniform. I highly doubt anyone just sells away naming rights to their midfield logo. Hopefully not, but it's going to happen. This is going to be a byproduct. That's part one. Now, this was a more shake your head and kind of unhappily grin sort of piece that Ross Dellinger put out earlier today. But I'll tell you who put out probably the best thing I read all day, and that was Brandon Marcello over on 247sports.com. Marcello, it felt like it probably took a month to do the piece he did and released earlier today. But it was about this whole like tangled web that is the new frontier of college football and then college athletics and then the whole Title IX stuff and how's all this going to play out. And I know from, just judging by my inbox, some of you are concerned because maybe you have like friends or family members or you yourself play a non-revenue generating sport and you're worried about if those are going to go away. They're going to be a casualty of this new world. But there are many more of you who are just flat out worried about football. You're worried about what's going to happen to football. What happens if my university can't afford to be competitive in payment and revenue share and stuff like that? Don't be worried, at least about football. The rest of it is the rest of it. But Marcelo put together a really good feature today He had several people on the record from both the administrative and representative world. He had legal types. He had NIL folks. He had a lot of different folks on the record. But basically, the crux of it is this. With the money that's about to be paid to football players, how does Title IX overlap with that? Or put more plainly, will Title IX laws be interpreted to mean that if we're paying the offensive linemen at Indiana certain amounts of money, do we also have to pay the lacrosse players or the female track and field athletes the same amount? Now, there's pretty broad legal consensus in that piece that no, you don't have to. And one of the tells is, according to this latest settlement that we just had, where $2.8 billion in back pay damages was paid as a result of that class action lawsuit settlement, 90% of that money is going to football players. And so there's a thinking in the legal community that that same precedent will apply to future revenue share. I have no idea. I have never darkened the door of a courtroom in this capacity, but that is just brushing the surface, believe me, of that feature Marcelo put out today. 247sports.com. You can find it over there right now. It's really interesting. But anyway, I say all that to say this. College football will be fine. College football will probably be more than fine here. College football will enjoy a decade to come that's been as prosperous as any decade in the history of the sport. Now, it may be that certain people that enjoyed prosperity in the 20-teens, may have to settle for, a more generic brand of caviar in the future relative to the ones that, management and those types love to feed themselves. But that's okay. That's okay. I said the other day, not to go full class warfare on you or anything, but I said the other day, if one of the byproducts of this new era is some of the folks who enriched themselves on college athletics, even while not really loving college athletics, no longer get to do that, that's fine by me. That's fine by me. Now, you got some other folks who really do love college athletics, and they've been in the game for a long time, and they've made very good incomes. I got no problem with that. But on the whole, just remember, football's the engine. They can't afford for football to fail. We've actually got a too big to fail situation here. Football's too big to fail. If football fails, it all fails. So if your sister is a swimmer at a major university right now, and you're worried that somehow swimming could be collateral damage and it could be ruined in the wake of all this, I can't tell you that's true. I can't tell you it's not true. But if your brother is the tight end at like Texas Tech and you're worried about it, I would say you're probably worried about the wrong things here. They can't afford for football to go belly up. So, there may be some things I'm worried about. Behind the scenes, football is not one of them. Football will be fine. It may feel a little different. Football will be fine. Okay, we had some scheduling news today. I tried twice in that segment to no avail. Nothing else has gone right today. Why would this? I have an itch on the tip of my nose right now, probably because of the way I pluck my nose hairs, admittedly. And I tried to do the swipe by scratch a couple of times, and it did not work. So the strategy there is wait till we get to the end of a segment and then, full scale scratch, because that's not going in an individual video that Colin cuts up and puts up for later. And so the only people who see that are the ones watching the live show. And I know you guys won't tell anyone, and certainly no one would ever screen grab that. But you're too responsible and too adult to ever do something like that. So thank you in advance. The SEC released a ton of scheduling news today, and there was some good and there was some horrible. The good SEC here, let's go good first. The good SEC is they're announcing kickoff times way ahead of time. That's a good thing. We were always capable of this as a people, as a college football society. We were always capable of this. So we know Clemson, Georgia is going to kick off noon Eastern time, week 1 in Atlanta. We know Miami's going into the swamp against Florida. Week 1, 3:30. If they die, they die is basically the attitude the schedule makers took, because it's Florida in late August and we're going to kick off at 3:30 and whatever. That's going to be on ABC. We also know week 2, Texas goes to Michigan. Big noon kickoff. Your boy may very well be there. Week 3, Bama goes to Wisconsin. Big noon kickoff. It's not my network. Fox just happens to have the broadcast window that is my favorite window, because the earlier the better for me, and I know that hardly any of you agree with me on that, which brings me to my next point. There was some bad. Okay, so the good is the SEC announced scheduling. They're going to announce a ton more games June 11th. I think that's right, Jesse. The first 3 weeks are already set. Good job to the SEC. Hats off. Credit where it's due. You guys had to ruin the Red River Shootout for me, didn't you? I have an affinity, borderline love affair with the Red River Rivalry. Excuse me, Shootout. I didn't mean to drop profanity on the show. This is the Red River Shootout. And whatever your focus groups told you to call it instead, because 14 people may get their feelings hurt, I don't care. It's the Red River Shootout on this show. And it should kick off at 11 a.m. Central Time. But it will not this year. It will kick off at 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central on ABC. So a lot of people got their way on this. I don't know if I'm in the minority, but it is super split because a lot of fans, a lot of OU and Texas fans actually want it to be at 3:30 so they can, probably just have more time to drive to the game, I'd imagine. What other reason would you want 3 additional hours in the morning and early afternoon for? So selfishly, and I'll admit, selfishly, I have always loved this game being at 11 a.m. I have been 2 of the last 3 years. It has been very memorable. I have been taking shots left and right trying to defend the sanctity and integrity of this game against folks in the SEC who claim it takes a backseat to the Iron Bowl, and folks in the Big Ten takes a backseat to Ohio State, Michigan. Well, it doesn't, though, guys. I've been on the field in all of those instances at all of these games recently. Therefore, of course, I'm an authority on this, and it doesn't take a back seat. A lot of you are talking trash about a game you've never been to. And if you go to it this year, the only difference is it'll be at 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central. I'm not a fan. And here's the worst part. Here's salt in the open wound. You used to say salt in the womb. Bad malapropism. But salt in the womb, salt in the wound, whatever. I wanted LSU South Carolina to be a night game. I kind of had my eye on that one of, might LSU get the nighttime Williams-Brice treatment? Might we hear Sandstorm as the sun sets there in the Palmetto State noon kickoff? So all I ask, Greg Sankey and his group of schedulers down there in Birmingham, is loop me in on this stuff. I could be of great assistance. Now, my decisions won't be popular, so if you care about fan feedback, ignore everything I'm saying, but we could do better. I just think we could do a little bit better. Now, we need to talk about Thanksgiving. Not your plans or my plans or whether it's dressing or stuffing or anything like that. We do need to talk about the fact that the Egg Bowl is no longer being played on Thanksgiving. And so I don't know what in the world I'm expected to do, hang out with family in silence with no TV on. Well, what kind of existence is that? But yet that's what we're being forced into because they took Thanksgiving night Egg Bowl away from us. And that's going to be on Black Friday. Now, the trade-off here is Black Friday is pretty stacked as a lineup. They've got that one. I should have written them all down. There are a lot of big games on Black Friday. Kirby Smart, I think, pulled one off, whether he had anything to do with it or not. Georgia versus Georgia Tech moved to Black Friday as well, which means in a world where Georgia is playing in the SEC championship game, and let's be real, there is a more than reasonable chance of that happening. He bought himself an extra day of prep. Now, on the front end, your Thanksgiving week is thrown into a blender, but Georgia folks don't think they're going to struggle with Tech anyway. Whether they do or not, they don't think they are. So they'd much rather have the short rest on the front end and give us one extra day to prepare on the back end. Georgia, the current odds-on favorite to win the SEC championship. Texas, second. Ole Miss, third. Bama, fourth. Now, here's what we don't know. I don't think we got a kickoff time for Texas versus Texas A&M. But, Jesse, I did not tell you to look this up, so I'm talking really slow where you can take those little sausage fingers of yours in there. No, Jesse's done really, really good. He's in the greatest shape of his life. You type on that computer and you find me whether they're scheduled to play that game on Friday or Saturday, because I think it's Saturday, Texas versus Texas A&M, which is the last game of the regular season. You know what? Screw it. It's going to be on a Saturday. So I don't know when that one kicks off. I don't think we're getting it on Thanksgiving. Texas and Georgia, by the way, the only two teams in the SEC with over-under win totals in the double digits. They're at 10.5. Now, Uncle Dennis was down in Destin at SEC spring meetings, so I didn't have to be. And Uncle Dennis wrote a story on CBSSports.com earlier today. And Uncle Dennis, that's Dennis Dodd to the layperson, Uncle Dennis to me. He wrote a story, and the headline was basically, it wasn't clickbait, because if you clicked on it, Dennis was talking about the thing that he put in the tweet. Although, as we all know, the modern guidance on logic is anything you disagree with is clickbait. So if Dennis said something you disagree with, clickbait. Having said that, Dennis wrote a story today, and it was basically talking about the possibility of 9-3 teams from the SEC making the playoff over maybe even 11-1 teams from other conferences making the playoff. And so I'm pausing, because I'm letting you react to that. I know a lot of you have a lot of strong feelings on this. Now, it's all hypothetical right now, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to focus on it, but I'm going to anyway. This is a reckless show anyway. Right now, it's May 30th. And I am telling you this is going to happen. I expect this to happen. I expect there to be some case study this year where a 9-3 SEC team gets in the playoff over some 10-2 or maybe even 11-1 team from fill-in-the-blank conference. Now, not the Big Ten, but if you tell me a 9-3 SEC, especially if it were like Florida playing their schedule, but just think about a reasonably difficult SEC schedule, 9-3, going in over an 11-1 from like a G5 conference, or even maybe the Big 12. Absolutely, I could see that happening. And here's why. Because their schedules are tougher. I also know a lot of you have a lot of feelings on that. But producer Jesse and I pulled up the FanDuel odds to win the college football playoff today. And I know there will be conspiracy behind the number I'm about to give. I already know what your comeback is. So trust me, I'm about to give you a stat. And for the SEC haters amongst us, I know what your comeback is before I even give you the stat. Because I know my audience. I know it. And I'm going to state your comeback for you, so you will have representation on the show. But here's the stat. 12 SEC teams are scheduled to play 5 or more teams in the college football playoff odds. So if you take the odds to win it all, the top 25, there are 12. There are a dozen SEC teams that have at least 5 of those teams on their schedule. The Big 10, the Big 12, and the ACC combined to have just 4 teams that face at least 5 in the preseason top 25. Now, that's not a ranking. That's not a poll. Those are just the numbers we have right now, and those are the numbers to win the whole thing, to win the national championship. So presumably, those teams are expected to be pretty good. I said I know what your comeback is. Let's see how I did. Okay, if you had a visceral reaction to me reading that stat, did you think something like, well, of course, that's self-fulfilling because the odds market serves to falsely inflate SEC odds, and they underinflate other schools because the SEC enters the season overrated. Therefore, on the back end, they get to pound this drum about how many ranked teams they played, how many ranked wins they have, or even worse, how many losses against ranked teams they had, which still builds them up at the end of the season, even though they lost games. Is that something along the lines of what you were thinking? Well, here's my comeback. I don't have one because it's May. I was just giving you the point, and you can counter it with whatever you want to, but I am telling you, not in a matter of fact, but an opinion that I think will become a fact. Uncle Dennis, the proposition he made earlier today in the concept of a 3-loss SEC team making your precious 12-team playoff now over maybe 2 or 1-loss teams from other conferences, I think that's going to happen. I think that's going to happen. I know this thing's going to happen. Zanesville, Ohio. Are you guys listening? Anywhere close to Zanesville, Ohio. You guys have a new Academy Sports and Outdoors opening approximately tomorrow. It's a grand opening, and the way we treat grand openings of Academy around here, because they are our dear partner, is we challenge you. And if you can get to Zanesville and you can prove to me that you were at the grand opening, take a picture of yourself out front, take a picture of your receipt, whatever. Tag me in it. If you bring it to my attention, hundreds of you probably will, based on past experience. 5 of you are going to get a chalice of supremacy out of this. Chalice of supremacy, and chalice is the plural of chalice for those of you new to the show. Chalice of supremacy are not for sale. And trust me, we've taken offers before. They can only be obtained by fulfilling challenges given out on the show, going above and beyond to promote the show, on one's own volition. You know how rarely I use that word. And this is an opportunity. This is a challenge. Zanesville, Ohio, 3925 Gorski Drive. Grand opening tomorrow. Get over there. And if you just happen to live in Amarillo, Texas, don't worry. You got Academy out there too, or academy.com. It's not like I'm forgetting you. It's just a special time in Zanesville, Ohio. And how often do we say that, right? So congrats in advance to the 5 Chowline winners. In the meantime, let's go back and let's, I guess, have to revisit something here. Pains me to say. So I need to take a sip out of this nondescript water bottle. Why would I tear the label off a Callaway Blue bottle? Callaway Blue, for those unfamiliar, is bottled in Harris County, Georgia. So I apologize, guys. Right there on Highway 116, I apologize. I'll keep your sticker on the bottle next time. It's bleu, by the way. Callaway Bleu, not just Callaway Blue. Good water, though. Good water. Bottled at the source. So, Colin, here's a good endpoint for you. Let's get back to bold predictions. What are the boldest things you believe this year that you would bet your own hard-earned money on? The other night, I asked you guys, pay close attention, because we were talking about a lot of in-the-weeds stuff on the show, and you paid attention, because when it came time to do bold predictions, I think I screwed one up. Scratch that. Producer Jesse screwed one up, and I just followed along because I was distracted and doing other things during the day. And so we've got to revisit it for the first time ever. We are redoing a bold prediction. Let's read it very slowly together. Lanning Muse from Macomb, Michigan. All Power 4 conferences will be won by new members of that conference. Yours truly the other night kind of took that to mean new teams will win every conference. Well, no. He means quite literally teams that are new to the conference this year, first-year teams, will win those conferences. Okay, this is a 10 on the boldness scale. So there you go. If that's what you're going for, congrats, you got a 10 on the boldness scale. This is not crazy in the SEC. Texas has the second best odds, OU, ninth best odds. Yeah, you can see Texas win this thing. The Big Ten, Oregon, second best odds, USC fifth. Absolutely, especially Oregon could win that. The Big 12, Utah's the odds-on favorite to win the conference right now. So if chalk holds in the Big 12, yeah, Utah could make that happen. Those aren't your problems. Your problem is the ACC, because you got to have SMU win it, because Cal's not doing it. Yes, they're an ACC school now. Stanford's not doing it. Yes, they're an ACC school now. SMU's got the seventh best odds to win the ACC. So you got to have all the other stuff pan out, and you got to have SMU do better than Miami, Clemson, Florida State. That's just not all going to happen. And I would even say just predicting a new team wins the ACC alone is like an 8.75 or 9. All 4 of them, that's a 10. That I think our second or third 10 already on the boldness scale. We've got another bold prediction here. Jake the Snake loved your in-ring work, my friend. On the mic, second to none. But Jake the Snake from Carrollton, Georgia. Alabama wins the national championship. Pretty clean and straightforward. I'm going to make it an 8.75. They got the 5th best odds to win it all at plus 1,400. Can they just overcome the churn? Can they overcome all the change happening there? I have no idea, because we are dealing with things there that I've got folks watching the show in high school that don't even recall a time when Nick Saban wasn't the head coach at Alabama. So there's a lot of churn. They got themselves a great head coach in Kalen DeBoer. They've got a great organization there that I think in time will do great things and could this year. I'm not, I know it kind of sounded like my tone was, I'll just make it through this year. Better days will come. They can win the national title this year. They can win the SEC this year. They can win 11 games this year. But they're 98th in returning production. They lost their best football player in Caleb Downs, in my opinion. And that's redundant because it's my show, so of course it's my opinion. Does Georgia elevate from the pack this year? Does Texas or Ole Miss, will one of those teams or more than one of those teams, will they elevate from the pack? Because if they don't, and if the picture kind of remains wide open, then, hey, Bama may have, little first world flaws here and there, but if the rest of them do too, who knows what Kalen DeBoer can pull off year one. I'm calling that an 8.75. Number one, because it's hard to predict anyone to win a title in a 12-team playoff format in May. Even the really good teams. Predict Georgia. Who's the favorite, Jesse? Georgia and Ohio State are the favorites. Texas, I don't care. Pick any of them. You're going to get at least an 8 on the boldness scale from me on all of those. just because it's hard to predict a national champ. So 8.75 on Bama. Clemson. This is a really good one here for Clemson because it's not just Clemson. So Gary from Trussville, Alabama said, Clemson will go deeper in the playoff than Ohio State. And we were trying to think earlier today. I don't remember anyone structuring a prediction quite like this. I love it. I really love it. Clemson goes deeper in the playoff than Ohio State. I made that one an 8.75 as well. Clemson plays 4 teams in the college football playoff top 25 odds. Can they afford to be 9-3? Just a random question there. Can they afford to be 9-3? Colin, you got their schedule right quick. I want to point something out. So Clemson opens neutral against Georgia in Atlanta. They're a 12 or 13-point dog, I think, there right now. So they also go to Florida State, and they've got some tough games away from home. They go to Virginia Tech November 9th. I think that'll be a dogfight. They go to Pitt the very next week. Louisville and at Virginia Tech back-to-back is not an easy stretch. My point there is, what if they're not noticeably improved? They're probably a 9-3 caliber team if they're not noticeably improved. Can they make the playoff? Now, if they are a noticeably improved team and they make the playoff, well, then obviously it's game on. And do they have a first-round bye? Did they win the ACC? Did Ohio State win the Big Ten? Someone could have a first-round bye. Someone could be playing in round one. Clemson will not be as good to start the season as Ohio State, I don't think. Now, that doesn't mean everything. It does mean a lot. It doesn't mean everything. There are talented teams that miss out on opportunities that maybe less talented teams take from them every year. And I'm not about to sit here and pretend like Clemson is some poverty roster, only because I'm not going to fall victim to holding them to the same mid-20-teen standards that a lot of other people do. That's a really good team. Clemson's got really good players. They got a really good coaching staff. Just because you wouldn't pick the 2024 team to beat the 2016 team doesn't mean they're not good. Are they Ohio State good? Or is Ohio State overrated? There's also that possibility. Or is there some big injury that we don't know about, nor does the person making this prediction know about, that could change everything? I don't know. But I'm making it an 8.75. I love the structure of the prediction. Lastly, we're going to 9.5 here. Thomas said Syracuse will go 11-1 in the regular season. Congrats, Thomas. That's a 9.5 on the boldness scale. A quick reminder, anyone who makes a prediction deemed 9.5 or higher on the boldness scale and hits gets a chalice of supremacy. The last time Syracuse won 11 or more games, does anyone in the room want to take a guess? No, they do not, because no one's in the room. But I have the number in front of me. It was the year of 1987. And now Fran Brown's going to try and do it in year 1. So it sounds impossible, right? Not impossible, unlikely, but not impossible. There is a glimmer of hope here. FanDuel has their over-under win total at 7.5. And that's because number one, they have the number 16 team in the country in terms of returning production. The roster is much improved. They did really, really, really good and timely stuff in the transfer portal. They should, and that's a strong word, they should be 4-0 in their non-conference schedule. They got Ohio and Holy Cross and UNLV and UConn. The Syracuse folks would tell you, at least, I think we should be 4-0 against that. I don't know that if Barry Odom watches the show tonight, I don't know that he'll agree that October 5th date out there in Las Vegas should be a win for the Cuse. But nevertheless, arguably, they should expect to go 4-0 there. If they do, they avoid 5 of the top 7 teams in the ACC. So, Kyle McCord's the quarterback there now. He was the starter for Ohio State last year. There's a lot of stuff that makes you go, ooh, watch out for Syracuse. Well, I don't mind watching out for Syracuse. Watching out for them to go 11-1 is a little too bold for my taste, and that's why I'm going to put a 9.5 on it. But if it does happen, here it is. We don't delete shows. We don't edit shows. It's going to be here in front of God and everyone. 9.5. Syracuse going 11-1. Fun exercise upcoming. A couple of weeks ago, I'd say about 2 weeks. I mean, Jesse was not even married the last time we did it, if that's any indication on a timeline. We did this thing where after the SEC wrapped up their spring ball, we just did snapshots of pretty much the whole conference. And we got really good feedback on it. So I figured, let's keep doing it. Let's go to the Big Ten tonight. So what I'm going to do here is It's not going to be the whole conference, but most of the conference. I'm going to go with a team, and we picked them in random order earlier today. I'm going to go with a team, and I'm going to give you something right now that's on my mind, and you know what, maybe on my heart. It could be a question, it could be a takeaway, it could be a very, very bold prediction, it could be any of a number of things. So here we go. Colin, here's an endpoint. Big Ten snapshot. We're out of spring. We're in summer workouts now. The season's less than 100 days away. Where are we at? Where are we at on Michigan? Michigan right now, they're not the defending champ because you can't take the trophy away from them, but they are last year's champ. The offensive line lost 199 starts. I don't think that unit can be as good as it was last year. Some of you argued with me the other day on that. I didn't say they're not going to be good. I think the unit will be good. You're not going to be as good as you were last year. So you've got that. You've got newness at the quarterback position, not to mention the coaching staff. My simple question is, can you have the identity you want to have? You know what Michigan wants to be. The culture's not going anywhere. The DNA of this program's not going anywhere. Last year, they could do exactly what they wanted to do. With all the newness in certain positions, can they be who they want to be? Can they do what they want to do this year? Sharon Moore, if they can, has a chance to write one of the most legendary stories in the history of Big Ten football. Because if they were to do something more than just play pretty good this year, like if they go beat Ohio State, they go win the Big Ten, and they're in the playoff, and all this stuff changed, that would be wild. You're talking about a huge story in college football. What about Washington? Washington's brand new. They just walked in the door. It's going to take time. It should take time. Washington is a window program. Window programs, as defined on this show, are the programs where they can't just reload every year. It's not like Ohio State. They got to circle a year. They got to build up to it, and that was last year for Washington. And they did good. They won the Pac-12. They went to a national title game. So even if DeBoer was still there would be an expected drop-off, a little regression to the mean this year. But as it stands, Kalen DeBoer's in Tuscaloosa. Jed Fish is the new head coach there. Washington is tied for 125th in returning production. Their win total 7.5. Jed Fish, I think, is capable of pulling off magic. In his first year at Arizona, he was 1-11, and then they just skyrocketed ever since then. He does inherit a solid program. Now, some of the players look different. In fact, most of your starting 22 looks different, but the nuts and bolts, the framework of the program he's inheriting is really good, really rock solid. That matters. That matters. It may not matter as much in the win-loss column in year one as you may want it to matter, but it matters. Year two and beyond, it matters. USC, another team I've had a fair amount of argument, I guess, about, which is why God invented May. It's a Meemaw quote. It's not my quote. Defense and line of scrimmage. I don't think they'll be good enough there. But if I'm wrong, then I'll find out repeatedly. Because their defense and their line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball, will be tested repeatedly. Not just against the quote-unquote good teams in the Big Ten, but most of the teams they play in the Big Ten, including some that will be ranked behind them to start the season. They will test them over and over, and here's my concern if I'm a USC fan. There's a difference between having a weakness and just having a terminal flaw. If our run defense is a weakness, if our interior guard play, and I'm just making stuff up at the moment, if our interior guard play is a weakness, we can find ways to hopefully work around it. If it's a terminal flaw, we can't. We can't. There's a big, big difference in weakness versus terminal flaw. So, if they're still a top 10 offense with Miller Moss at quarterback, and they're decent on defense, which means they have significantly upgraded, then they can contend in the Big Ten. If they're not, if that offense falls out of favor a little bit, it's like a top 25 or 30 type unit, and that defense is still 90th or worse, then they could miss a bowl game. There's a lot of variance in the potential outcomes here with USC, depending on whether they have some relative weaknesses or whether they still have terminal flaws like last year's team did. They open against LSU in Las Vegas on September 1st. That's a Sunday night. We will start our show early that night so we can be off the air in time for that Sunday night show. I don't know why I tossed the paper aside. We're not close to done. Wisconsin? How much do we trust Tyler Van Dyke? He transferred there from Miami. He will be the starting quarterback this year. They're not a portal-heavy team. This is not Luke Fickell looking and saying, we got to win now, by any means necessary. They're not doing that. they're building for the long haul. They're doing it the right way. They have, at least at Cincinnati, all the reason in the world to make someone like me believe in their evaluation and their development. They'll have that. I have no doubt Luke Fickell will always have that. Bama, USC, Penn State, Iowa, Oregon, and Nebraska, all on the schedule this year. So Wisconsin, of course, could surprise people and contend for the Big Ten championship, and that would be wonderful. Even if they don't, they could be a wild card that either serves to propel or derail multiple other playoff runs, because a lot of these teams are expected to do big things, and they all got something in common. They all got to play Wisconsin. Tyler Van Dyke was plagued by turnovers last year at Miami. If he's fixed that, he could be one of the pleasant surprises in the conference this year, which is why my big question is, how much will we be able to trust him? Penn State. I think of Penn State like when you throw on a jacket, and no one ever puts on a jacket and has it immediately feel just right. You put on a jacket, especially the heavy ones, you got to work it around a little bit, pull the drawstrings even, fix the hoodie on it, and it takes a couple of seconds, right? That is how I feel about Penn State every year. Penn State, when will the adjustment be right? When will the shrug of the shoulders or the lurch of the right arm, when will the pulling of the drawstring, when will the right combination of adjustments lead to a comfortable fit? They don't need to change the jacket. Everything's almost in place. It's just like, what year is the right amount of adjustment made? So Andy Kotelnicki's the offensive coordinator that brought in from Kansas. And the whole word of the summer up there is just explosive, explosivity. They were terrible in that metric last year. They've got to be way, way, way better. What USC lacked defensively, Penn State lacked in big games in explosivity offensively. And it's that simple. Defensively, they'll still be very good. They at least lost enough at corner to make me wonder about it, but people close to the program think with the pickups they made in the portal, they'll be good. They'll be plenty good enough at corner. Elsewhere, even with a new defensive coordinator, I don't have doubt there. I just have doubt about their question at least, about their ability to move the ball down the field. That's it. Has the right adjustment been made? Ohio State, what should I expect from Will Howard? Transfers there from Kansas State, quarterback, what should I expect? This is not a situation where we look and we say, save us, Will. This is a situation where we look and we say, don't screw it up, Will. We're good. It's like Gary Bertier's ill-delivered speech to Denzel when he first shows up. We don't need any of your guys. We already got it set over here. Well, someone could actually look at Will Howard and kind of have that attitude. Will, we don't need miracles, man. We look at these tailbacks we have. Yeah, look at both of those guys. Crazy, right? You see these wide receivers? That one's a true freshman. The alien-looking one over there, that's a true freshman. Will, I'd like you to meet Caleb Downs. He's not even going to play on the field at the same time as you, but he's going to play with this kid. You just need to know 3 letters, JTT, and that's Jack Sawyer there and Denzel Burke. And all these guys are wearing the same uniform as you. And the point is, they're all going to play on Sundays one day. In the meantime, let them work to your benefit. Just don't screw it up for us, please. Make good decisions. Just make good decisions. They, ironically, at Ohio State, should be able to incorporate the same blueprint Michigan did last year. They should be able to play as physical a brand of football as anyone in the country. Should be. Is it in their DNA to do it? I think it's healthy at this point to question not Ohio State as a program. They're 9/10 of the way where they need to be. It's just, the final rung of the ladder. Well, I think a lot of intangible is what's going to determine that. A lot more than do they have good enough football players. They've had good enough players. It's just when your face gets closer to the fan and closer to the fan, do you lurch back at the last minute or do you stick your face all the way in that fan? Michigan did last year. Ohio State didn't. Ohio State's got the horses to do it. They should be able to be that team, not even flinch. Basketball in Kobe's face, he doesn't even flinch. That should be Ohio State this year. You will rarely see an elite team, an elite program, go more all in on a season than Ohio State's going this year by every available metric. So, Will Howard, what should I be able to expect? Hey, I don't mean to alarm anyone, but Rutgers is pretty good. Rutgers right now, very similar track from Greg Schiano's previous stint. When he was there, they went 7-5. It took 4 seasons, but in his 4th season, he wins 7 games. Then they won 11, 8, 8, and 9 the next 4 years. Well, they just went 7-6 in his 3rd year back. And they are top 15 in returning production. They don't play Michigan. They don't play Ohio State. They don't play Penn State. They don't play Oregon. They play some dude named Howard in week 1. How did that happen? I don't know. I don't care, because if you're not a premier brand, no one hates on your strength of schedule. And aside from former colleague of ours, Lance Glenn, Rutgers is not a premier brand. So no one's going to trash their strength of schedule. However, they could be in conversations you think Rutgers has no business being in November because, number 1, Schiano's really good. Number 2, the team is very hard-nosed. And number 3, this is a very, very favorable path. And I don't really think they want anyone noticing, so I'm going to move on. Iowa. It's kind of a good spot for Tim Lester, is it not? What door would you rather walk into right now than being Iowa's offensive coordinator? Some of you listen and you say, well, that's dumb. Iowa's bad on offense. Yeah, I know. This is a high expectation industry. Coaching, calling plays at this level is like a tightrope walk, 100 stories above the street. But all of a sudden, when you walk in and they haven't been doing anything, every move you make is going to be good. They got shut out in 3 of their 4 losses last year, like goose egg on the board, which is totally inexcusable. I don't care how conservative and ground and pound you are, horrifically bad. And through whatever mechanisms, they were forced to make some moves at offensive coordinator. Enter the season, shocker, number 2 defense in S&P Plus. Top 10 returning production. So they're going to be a veteran-laden team with a good defense again. It's rinse and repeat every year for Iowa. Can they score? Can they score? A little Iowa color scheme on the shirt here. One night only, of course. Over-under win total, 7.5. There you go. That's it. Next up, Oregon. This should be a national championship contending team. Quarterback is set. They got 2 of the best wide receivers in the country and several more behind them. Defense is going to be very good, and it's yet another beautiful spot. Because Oregon's a team that checks pretty much every box you need to check to make a deep run in the playoff, but they hadn't done anything on that front. So you can fully believe in them, but I could also sit here and I could say, what if they won? No, I don't go down that road. But you can say they still got a lot to prove, because they do. They still need to win the Pac-12 or now the Big Ten, because they haven't. They still need to prove they can make the playoff, much less do something in it, because they haven't. It's not hating, it's just reality. So I love that. Like, if I'm a fan, I love that I'm loaded. My coaching staff has just been totally relentless in stacking talented classes and portal classes on top of each other, and they're being doubted. That's a good thing. If you're a fan out there in Salem or Eugene or Bend, Oregon, that's a really, really good thing. They should be very, very high level this year. Maryland? What do we think about Maryland? You remember we did a little segment when the Big Ten announced that they were going to totally scrap divisions. And I said, Maryland's the big winner here. Because Maryland was the team that hadn't been half bad, but they were stuck in the same division as Penn State and Michigan and Ohio State, and it was crap. Maryland could have competed multiple years in the Big Ten West, but they never got the chance to. Well, now, divisionless conference, and Maryland is on a little bit better footing. Can they take advantage of it this year? They're 102nd in returning production. So can they take advantage? That's the thing I think about with Maryland. They open against UConn. They got Michigan State, Virginia, Nova, Indiana, Northwestern. They don't play a premier national kind of game until USC, the 19th, and Southern Cal has to come there. Nothing like traveling 3,000 miles for a conference game. What about Nebraska? Hey, I got a question for you. Has anyone, and I mean anyone, bet the under on Nebraska? 7.5 wins? Has anyone bet the under? Good defense? Check. Top 20 returning production? Check. Got good skill players? Check. Quarterback, Dylan Raiola, got him. I think he'll probably end up starting there. Check. Oh, everything's great. Positive momentum? Check. The only thing that hasn't happened is the Pate State Speaker Series has not made it to Lincoln yet this summer. Other than that, everything's coming up roses for Nebraska. Is anyone doubting this team? Boy, that feels dangerous, doesn't it? And yet there they are, over under win total 7.5. Someone out there is betting that under because it's heavily juiced right now. I just don't know anybody. Hey, just go do it. Just go win 9 games, basically is my feel. You're talking about a schedule setting up just overly favorably. UTEP, Colorado, Northern Iowa, Illinois. Don't have to leave home for any of them, by the way. And then it's Purdue, Rutgers, Indiana, Ohio State. 10-26, that's the first one where you look and you say, well, it could be fairly tough now. And Michigan State I wanted to touch on. Basically, this is negative sounding, but it's how I will view them this year. Their over-under win total is 4.5. I'm watching Michigan State with 2025 in mind. And anything you accomplish this year is great, but that's a bonus. That's like dessert before the meal, because I don't care what you guys tell me, you were a loser in the portal. You lost a lot more than you gained, to me. And I think there's still a learning curve that has to be gone through for that new staff, not only in recruiting up there, but also in building that NIL structure and that portal structure. They'll get it. I think they'll get it. I think Jonathan Smith's a wonderful coach. You just don't get it overnight. And so 2025 and beyond is the lens, little periscope there, through which I'll watch everything Michigan State this year. Let's move it along. I have got, let's see, you know what? It is a jam-packed show. Jam-packed show. But we're not stopping because I got a lot more to get to. I got some thoughts on rivalry games. Rivalries are one of the best things in college football. I love rivalries. I think there's a healthy amount of hatred that's good to have in your life. And I think things have gotten way too cozy in our sport. Just way too cozy. With the erosion of real, honest-to-God hatred in rivalries in sports, we've seen some disgusting things start to take place. We've seen civility, no place for that in rivalries. We've seen outward shows of friendship. I got no time for it. So, Lane Kiffin, I saw something from him yesterday. I hated it. Kiffin is at SEC spring meetings. Jeff Lebby is as well. One of them's the head coach at Ole Miss. The other one's the head coach at Mississippi State. At no point in history should these guys ever pose for a picture together. I don't care that they used to coach for or with each other. Don't want to see it. Hate it. Boo. Don't ever want. The only time I want to see it is when there is a pregame brief handshake at midfield before the Egg Bowl. And then post-game, whoever lost, I don't even want you making eye contact with who just beat you. And that's it. And then you guys will see each other maybe at media days, maybe on the speaking circuit. I don't want you being friends. It's not just that. Sharon Moore, Jonathan Smith, earlier today, we've got them just walking together, talking with each other. I hate it. There should be a restraining order. There should be like a force field. When I'm college football commissioner, I actually plan on making it illegal for rival head coaches to even be friendly in public. You guys want to text each other? Go ahead. I don't want it. Scott Strickland, the athletic director down at Florida earlier today, they were asking him about potential additions to the SEC. And listen to this, unsolicited. Quote, "We have a good relationship with our friends in Tallahassee." And then he went on to talk about how schools would or wouldn't be added. I don't want to know that you're friendly with these people. What happened to the game I love? What happened to the sport I love? Respect is okay. Respect, I got no problem with it. I encourage it, kids. Respect your opponent. Practice good sportsmanship. But hatred is not the worst thing in the world. Gordon Gekko once said greed is good, and that's debatable. Hatred can be good. It can be a good thing. It doesn't have to spill out into the streets. But man, I don't really want to see head coaches of rival programs hanging out with each other and basically trying to explain to you, look at how much bigger our friendship is than the game. Dude, you get to live in the houses you do because of this game. So how about we inject a little more hatred where it's due? Someone take that out of context and do whatever you want to with it. I just needed to get it off my chest. They're watching us in Abilene, Texas, New Albany, Mississippi, Brunswick, Georgia. Let's talk about some impact freshmen. One of you asked the other day, in fact, we do have it via tweet. One of our viewers from Omaha asked, what are the top 5 true freshman impact players in college football this season? Well, Cam Coleman's got to be one of them. That's that wide receiver at Auburn, number 5 overall player in the country, number 2 overall wide receiver. You could have listened to all the spring intel you wanted to, or just watch their spring game. Yeah, it's him. We think he probably profiles as their wide receiver 1 this year. We had Freeze on the show. He talked about all the young guys who are going to have to play. Some of those young guys are going to have to play out of necessity because there aren't any other players. Coleman's playing for most teams in the country. 6'3", 188, just insane. I was at Auburn when we did our show from there that day, and I was walking down the hallway. They were going into a team meeting before spring practice, for the practice that day. And I saw him. I had not seen him play in high school. I had not seen him in person. I saw him. And just looks like a 4th-year, 5th-year senior, and looks like he's lived in the weight room, and he was just born that way. It's unbelievable. So, yes, he will be one to watch this year. Dylan Raiola, talked about him a little while ago, quarterback at Nebraska. I mean, think about how big this could end up being. So Raiola's committed to Georgia for a long time. And no one nationally is really mentioning Nebraska. At least there's not like a solid drumbeat. And then all of a sudden, Nebraska flips him. What if he goes on to be like the quarterback at Nebraska? Imagine telling that story one day. The Georgia thing will kind of be a footnote, but we're living in the here and now. So he was not going to start for Georgia this year, obviously. He will, in all likelihood, start for Nebraska this year. And the raw ability is there. There's only one way to gain experience, as Meemaw used to say, and it ain't on the bench watching Carson Beck play. So he's going to be the guy there. 6'3", 220. He was the number 2 ranked quarterback in last recruiting cycle. Could be part of something special there. Jeremiah Smith would be... There's not a pause. There's nothing wrong with your audio feed. I'm trying to figure out what kind of language to use here. When you hear people who have been around football a long time and who are very guarded with their words, use the kind of language they use about Jeremiah Smith, it really opens your eyes. These are not people who are prone to tossing quarters into the hype machine. In fact, it's in their best interest to tamper down the hype. They talk about Jeremiah Smith as a talent in generational terms. They talk about him as if he could be one of, if not the best wide receiver talents we've ever seen come out of high school football. And he's at Ohio State. And they are not exactly hurting in the wide receiver room up there. And he will be an integral part of their offense this year. By the way, go find one of the Stars Don't Matter folks in your social circle. Have them watch number 4 in Scarlet and Gray this year. Just say, hey, Stars don't matter, right? It's just a crapshoot. Well, there's a true freshman 5-star receiver on this team. Just let him watch a couple of series. I want you to find him. It'll be like in the SMU 30 for 30 doc when Eric Dickerson was playing down at Sealy High School, and Ron Meyer just took a booster out there and said, hey, I'm recruiting a guy from Sealy High School. See if you can pick out which one it is. And the dude said, I watched a couple of plays. I pointed to the running back. He said, yeah. Who is that? That's Eric Dickerson. That's Jeremiah Smith. No pressure. No pressure whatsoever. He's really good, man. He was the fastest player to lose the black stripe up there in the history of Ohio State. That's what Jesse tells me, at least. And if it's not true, Jerry Emming will text me before the show's over. So, yeah, Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, 2 big-time receivers. Jordan Seaton, that's that offensive tackle that went to Colorado. And we think he plugs right in there on Shedeur Sanders' blind side. So last year, Shedeur Sanders, the dude played on turf sometimes and still had a dirty jersey at the end of the game. That's how many times he got sacked. 4.76 sacks per game last year, given up by Colorado. Second worst in the country. And that's Old Dominion was the only one worse. So that's a true freshman having to get plugged in at offensive tackle right away. He's got to be an impact player. For them to have a shot at doing big things this year, he's got to be an impact player. It was a high-profile recruitment, and now he's got to be a high-profile player. No other option. There's no other alternative. They bring guys in there to start. They brought that kid in there to start. Bryant Wesco is one more wide receiver I want to talk to you about. Bryant Wesco is at Clemson. I think he's going to be a really big-time player for them this year. He's a different kind of skill set at receiver and one they haven't had there enough lately, and he's got it. Different gear, different yards after catch ability, really good hands, and you saw him in the spring game. Dabo Swinney was like overtly praising him in spring, and so anytime those head coaches are just voluntarily talking up true freshmen, early enrollees in spring. They're very rarely doing that for no reason. And Dabo wasn't either. So he was a spring standout. I think he's going to shine. There's 3 wide receivers we talked about. It was a really good wide receiver class, obviously. The fine folks at FanDuel will have all kind of added games of the year coming up. But I already told you, Clemson opens against Georgia. Let's just say you've been paying attention to the Tigers and you think maybe they're a little underrated. Maybe you think Georgia's just a touch overrated. Clemson plus, what, Jesse? 13.5, I think it is at FanDuel right now. Against Georgia in week 1, you can go grab it. I would ask that you wait till the end of the show, but you can go grab it. You can go bet Clemson to make the playoff. If you hate Clemson, you can go bet them to miss the playoff, or you could just do neither and not bet on emotion. Responsible gaming. Hello. But whatever you want to do, if you just want to check out odds, if you have no interest in betting, but you just want to see what an odds maker thinks about my team. You know, what do you think about, let's just say Virginia Tech this year, FanDuel? Well, they'll tell you. Go to their, download the app, go to the website. They'll tell you. They are the exclusive odds provider of this show, and we appreciate it because we get a ton of useful information, both in front of the curtain and behind the curtain from them. Okay, the Mood Tracker segment is back. This one's going to be controversial only because I can't say anything on the show about this team without a ton of emotion pouring out in the comments, which is fine. The Mood Tracker heads to Coral Gables tonight. What is the mood amongst the Miami fan base? I think the mood is out of our way. I mean that on multiple fronts. You could say out of our way in the context of get out of our way. And that's just the way you say it when you're ultra confident. You fixed the offensive line last cycle. We had to address defensive line this cycle. We feel great at the line of scrimmage. Mario has stacked the roster. We just went and got Cam Ward, so our quarterback position is solved. Frankly, if we had Ward here last year, we could have won 9 or 10 games. But this year, with a better roster, guys like Reuben Bain, another year in the program, those offensive linemen, another year in the program, everyone's hungry. Get out of our way. There's that sentiment. But there's also the sentiment of out of our way, meaning we're out of our way. And this is some tough truth, but it's truth that I think most Miami fans understand. Miami has been Miami's biggest hurdle for quite a while. You can go as recently as last year, and the way the Georgia Tech game went down, you could go back way before Cristobal got there. And you could just look at how often good enough was enough. Because folks were just happy to wear that U on a shirt, or wear it on a hat, or if you're a coach, even wear it on your chest, and just live off the past. And the thing about it is that past does not feed you for nearly as long as you think it's going to. And yet they accepted mediocrity down there for a long time, or at least enough people in positions of power accepted mediocrity to where all of a sudden you've got a generation of kids now who do not know Miami the way I knew Miami when I was a kid, or maybe you knew Miami when you were 20 years old or 30 years old. It could all happen again, though. There's nothing stopping them. Even to this day, there's nothing stopping Miami but Miami. And by that, I mean, unlike the questions about Nebraska, for example, people question whether Nebraska can be what they used to be because of extenuating circumstances, stuff that may be out of Nebraska's control. At Miami, it's just keeping talent home, developing it, and then going and dominating. It's really that simple. They just haven't done it. It's that simple, and it's that hard. They are more dangerous than several teams that will enter the season ranked above them. That's how the fan base feels. Now, I happen to agree with them on that front. It's just, are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? You got all the talent down here. You've got this quiet confidence in the building. You've got the quarterback that you needed. You couldn't have handpicked a better one out of the portal to come down there. Are you going to do it? There's no need to manufacture anymore. You know, when Mario and his staff first got there, they knew we're going to have to sell hope for a couple of years probably. And they did a great job of it. They have done a great job of it. But you don't have to sell that anymore. The thing you should be selling about 7 or 8 months from now, what Miami should be selling is what we just did. What we just did on the field. We won the ACC. We went to the college football playoff. We had a quarterback contend for all kinds of national awards. We had defensive players contend for all kinds of national awards. In 2025, Miami should be selling results. instead of hype and instead of vision, because it's time to sell that. That's how the fan base feels. It's totally warranted. Expectations are high. They should be. And so they got the third best odds to win the ACC this year. We'll see. They tee it up week 1, non-conference game in Gainesville against Florida. Whew, that's just me sweating in advance. All right, good show tonight. I felt more exposed than the most naked man to ever walk the face of the earth because I didn't have my white T-shirt, but we made it, and I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you guys so much. For Director Colin, for Producer Jesse, take care. We'll be back same time Sunday night. Until then, God bless.